Good afternoon and welcome back to the News at Noon. I'm your host, Sammy Rodriguez. Today's top story follows up on a viral op-ed involving alleged sexual misconduct at the Infinity Long-Term Care Facility here in town. These allegations involve residents living with dementia. The op-ed was written by Layla Novak. She's raised questions about Infinity's response to such incidents, including one that directly involved her elderly father. We're lucky to have a few minutes with Layla today. Layla, I know this issue is sensitive and complicated, so perhaps we can start by hearing a bit more about your experience.
Thanks, Sammy. I agree that there's no easy answer, and I do think that's exactly why we need to talk more about it, and that's why I wrote the op-ed. My father has Alzheimer's, and until recently, he was a resident at the Infinity Care Home. So a couple of weeks ago, there was an incident where he was found in bed with a female resident. Neither of them seemed particularly upset about this, but this came on the heels of him being found masturbating a couple of times. So he developed a bit of a reputation. The next day, they sent my dad to a men's-only dementia unit at a completely different care home. And as his family, we were really upset about that because they didn't ask us about it, and there was no discussion, and we sort of got caught in this thing where everyone was treating him like he was a criminal.
That must have been really disorienting. So, what was it like for you and your family when you finally heard the news?
Well, it was hard. They made him sound like this sick monster, and that's not who he is. Since he developed Alzheimer's, he's been more sexually expressive, and that's not uncommon for people with this disease. And it isn't how he behaves all of the time. It's not like he was masturbating 24 hours a day. 99% of the time, he was just this quiet guy. Dementia can look like many different things. Care homes should anticipate this and have a much better plan than just hiring security guards and kicking you out in a crisis. He has Alzheimer's. He's not a criminal.
So, how do you think they could have handled the situation better?
I think that there are ways to plan for it. If you know that residents with dementia or Alzheimer's sometimes experience sexual disinhibition, then staff can be trained to anticipate it and redirect inappropriate gestures. At the second care home, my father was still sexually disinhibited, but thankfully the staff there understood that this was a part of his condition. They said, "Your dad's really easy to redirect. He's very polite." So they were really compassionate and treated him with respect. It removed the shame and allowed us to get through the crisis and see our dad as dad again.
Yeah. Layla, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. As the institution on the receiving end of this criticism, we also wanted to hear from the Infinity Care Home. Joining us today is Jamie, Infinity's care coordinator. Can you tell us your side of the story with what happened with Layla's father?
Thanks, Sammy. To be honest, sexual expression isn't new in long-term care. We're just getting this kind of attention now because people are taking their frustrations to the internet.
Well, this isn't a clear-cut case. It sounds like this man was expressing himself inappropriately, but did he even understand what he was doing?
Well, you see, that's what makes this complicated. Many of our residents have some form of dementia or cognitive impairment.
So, how do you navigate situations like that when residents may not necessarily understand that they're doing something that may be upsetting or disruptive to others?
It is challenging. And if we look at it from a legal perspective, we're constantly having to contend with, can she consent? How can we know for sure? And just because she can consent to the relationship, that doesn't mean she can or will consent to all interactions with his partner. Listen, we as care providers have a responsibility to protect our residents from unwanted or harmful sexual expression, so we don't have a lot of tolerance for risk. We tend to err on the side of caution.
Where do the residents' family, people like Layla, fit into all of this? Do they ever get involved in these decisions, perhaps on behalf of the resident?
Well, family members can be really stressed about their mom or dad showing some sexual expression that they've never seen before. Because they're working through their own baggage around it, they often overstep their bounds as families or as agents. So we need to communicate with them. And I'll admit, we haven't always been great at doing that. We've just got a lot going on.
Jamie, our time is coming to a close, but before we go, What should we be doing about this? How can we better navigate sexual expression in continuing care, particularly with residents who have conditions like dementia?
As we've said many times already, this is a complex issue, and we need to continue to have conversations about it. We have an ethical and legal imperative to protect our residents, and that's meant that we've had to make some tough calls around sexual expression at Infinity. That said, it's all still quite taboo, and I'm sure we benefit from a more open dialogue around it.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm hearing the need to protect residents who might be quite vulnerable in this context, but perhaps to Layla's point, there's a way to do that that doesn't also stigmatize or criminalize people with dementia. Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, sure, it's just not as so clear-cut in practice.
Thanks so much for chatting with us, Jamie, and thank you all for tuning in. And now over to Jenny with traffic.